So I've made a trip I've been wanting to make for a while to Knepp Estate in Sussex. This is a site of particular interest because it's a major project in an experiment of rewilding. So a large thousands of acres of not very productive farmland have basically been turned back to nature to see what might happen. And it's the subject of a book, Wilding by Isabella Tree, which is well worth reading. It's the book and my interest in the book that prompted me to come and visit and see the many different bits of wildlife. Obviously for me, birds were of particular interest. There are turtle doves here. I've not seen any today, but I have seen storks, which is pretty incredible. And what they do here is some very low intensity grazing. So they have traditional longhorn cattle, which I think you can just see some there. There's not many. There's a few Tamworth pigs, but they're nothing like the kind of density that you would normally have on a conventional farm. By this low intensity grazing, that means that wildflowers and other scrub develop, and that creates habitats for birds and other wildlife. One of the things that I noticed when I got here, as soon as I started walking, was the amount of bugs creeping and crawling, and insects flying, and butterflies fluttering past, and moths. And it reminded me that really with these types of experiments, often you have to start at the smallest aspects of it, which in this case is the insects. And if you read the book, you can learn about how they obviously stopped using pesticides, and seeing the amount of bugs here, it makes you realise quite how much damage we do with routine insecticide treatments of farmland. Because here the air is just buzzing away constantly. And of course, when you bring in the bugs, you also bring in the birds, which means there's a significant number of warblers. There's nightingales here as well, which is very rare. Don't have many of those in Gloucestershire. So it's a really fascinating place to be, and I think fascinating to see what can be done when we manage our landscape differently. I suppose the concept of the wild, the wilderness, features in Scripture. Jesus, of course, went into the wilderness. John the Baptist was in the wilderness. We have various references to the wild in the Old Testament. And of course, the creation narrative tells us something about how we're expected to live in harmony with the rest of the things in the created order. I think my experience here at Knepp and seeing other areas that run wild, it reminds us that actually being able to be in a kind of balance with nature creates a much more interesting type of environment. It feels much more healthy, and I think much closer to how creation is supposed to be, in the sense of actually having a balance of life, of all things. So this oak tree probably looks magnificent enough on its own, but there's something even more interesting in the top right corner as we look at it. That's one of the few breeding pairs of white storks in the UK. This is part of a programme to encourage white storks to return to south of England, and there's now a number of pairs, a number of nests here at Knepp Estate in Sussex. And I was lucky enough earlier to see 6 of them soaring on a thermal high in the sky. It took me a while to work out what they were, thinking first they were buzzards, and then I thought they were herons, which seemed very odd, and then when I got the binoculars out, realised that in fact what I was looking at something I'd never seen before, which was storks in number, soaring up into the sky. So what does all this mean in our spiritual practice? I think for me, part of spiritual discipline is about understanding and empathy. And I think one of the things, as I've thought more about wilding and letting nature do its own thing, is about just creating that greater empathy, that sense of the interdependence between all things. And for me, I wonder how I can continue to develop that in my own spiritual practice, be that in how I live my life and how, in terms of how I manage my garden, in terms of what projects I encourage, where I buy things from. All of these things, I think, demonstrating the kind of interconnectedness and I suppose the inherent compassion that we need to understand everything that's going on around us, particularly for the planet. And in doing that, I think we become closer to who God might want us to be in our care of his creation. I suppose for me, the final thought is just around kind of having the patience to sit and think and reflect on these things. So I'm going to end with a poem by W.H. Davies, who of course lived in Stroud for part of his life, that I think might encourage us to just pause and think. Leisure by William Henry Davis. What is life if full of care we have no time to stand and stare, no time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep or cows, no time to see when woods we pass where squirrels hide their nuts and grass, no time to see in broad daylight streams full of stars like skies at night, no time to turn at beauty's glance and watch her feet, how they can dance. No time to wait till her mouth can enrich that smile her eyes began. A poor life this, if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare.